When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
This episode is brought to you by United Airlines. When you want to make the most of your vacation, book with United. They're an airline that cares about your travels as much as you do. United is transforming the flying experience with Bluetooth connectivity, screens, power at every seat, and bigger overhead bins to help fit everyone's bag. And with their app, you can skip the bag check line, get live updates, and more. Change the way you fly. Book your next trip today at united.com.
Welcome back to Crime Capsule. I'm your host, Benjamin Morris. We hope you enjoyed our visit to haunted Staten Island last week with author Mariana Randazzo. I'm going to come right out and say it. Today, as we continue our journey through spooky season, we are heading clear across the country to the West Coast, and I could not be more excited about our destination. Not just for where we're headed, but for who's meeting us there. Crime Capsule veteran Brian Clune, whom we last spoke to 2 years ago after the publication of his book Haunted Southern California. One of the most prolific paranormal and true crime writers around, Brian is back with a new volume which is far more focused in its geography. Today, we're headed to the City of Angels, Los Angeles, which we might need to call the City of Angels and Demons. Certainly, there's more than meets the eye. Brian's new book is The Haunted Heart of Los Angeles, just published by the History Press. And once again, he is coming to us live from the USS Iowa, a battleship, where he serves as a guide and volunteer. He'll tell us about that momentarily, but for now, let me just note that where I'm recording here in haunted New Orleans, you may hear our assistant producer Snickers in the background, who can be somewhat of a restless spirit herself sometimes. So please bear with us. Brian, welcome back to Crime Capsule.
Thank you for having me.
Man, I tell you, we have been looking forward to this so much, and one of the absolute joys of having you on the show, of which there are many, 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 is the fact of where you are coming to us live from. Tell us again about this magnificent vessel from which you appear.
Okay, so I am sitting in what is called the Captain's In-Port cabin aboard the former USS Iowa battleship. I actually have this ship in one of my books, Haunted San Pedro. So I actually am a history nerd. I did not start to volunteer here due to the haunting activity. But the more I'm here, I have actually started to, this is going to sound kind of odd, become friends with some of the spirits here. So that actually makes it a little bit, I wouldn't say more pleasant, because I mean, I love being here, but it's definitely a fun place to volunteer.
Yeah. You know, I got to say, for a man with 15 or 16 books under his belt, I lost count after 10. You know, for you to tell me that you didn't volunteer because of the company, that's going to be a hard sell, Brian. It's going to be a hard sell.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's keeping me here, believe me. That a lot of really good people that work and volunteer here.
No, absolutely. Is the U.S. Navy still doing that ration of rum, or has that gone by the wayside?
Actually, we are the only Navy in the world that is a dry Navy.
Ugh, Well, there's still room for improvement.
There definitely is. The ration of rum actually comes from the British Navy. And I do know that American sailors sort of have adopted that, but we won't go into that because, officers don't need to know.
Of course, absolutely. And that's why that's why we have the split galley, don't we? All right, so let's talk about, you are not just on the magnificent USS Iowa at this very moment, but you are in a particularly unusual room aboard ship. Well, tell us about it.
So the captain's in-port cabin, and you'll notice I keep saying in-port. The captain would only be in this cabin when the ship was at anchor or tied up to a pier in a port. And it is the nicest cabin on the ship, except for the fact that the captain was never in here. However, what the history of this particular cabin, it is the only cabin on a battleship that has a bathtub. And the bathtub was installed for Franklin Delano Roosevelt for when he was transported from Norfolk, Virginia, over to Mirs El Kabir in North Africa for the Cairo and Tehran conferences.
That is arguably, with one possible exception, which I'll name in a moment, that is arguably the most historic bathtub I have ever heard about in my life.
Oh, absolutely. When I'm giving tours, I actually use this line. I tell people, yes, FDR's butt did touch this bathtub.
I like to think of it as it graced the bottom of the bathtub. But, it's that one, and it's the bathtub in which Taft was stuck, that I think would vie for the two most historic bathtubs in American history.
Yeah, quite possibly, yes. I would have to agree with that.
Good times, man. Well, please give our late departed commander-in-chief, our very, very, highest regards and deepest thanks for his efforts.
I absolutely will. I have not had the honor of seeing FDR, but other volunteers aboard actually have. This was FDR's favorite ship. He always called it a happy ship and his happy ship. So He apparently really likes it, and he hangs out every once in a while.
Well, she's a fine lady for sure. We know that.
Yes, she is.
So last time we talked, and you were in a different room aboard ships, this was 2 years ago, and we were talking about your book, Haunted Southern California. Now, that book was a real road trip. It was full of haunted mines and abandoned cemeteries and, just crazy cases all over the region, which was wonderful. You jump in the car, you let the book be your tour guide, your roadmap, and you come up with these crazy spots. Your new book that we're going to talk about today, Haunted Heart of Los Angeles, is much more focused. I mean, we're talking just a radically condensed geography here. But what led you to shift your gaze to such a more focused, see what I'm trying to say, a more focused approach?
The publisher. So it sort of has an interesting story. I was actually working on another book titled Haunted Northern California, which, by the way, that is the one I'm working on now. And I had always been told that, don't worry about ever doing a book on Los Angeles. It's a hard sell. People in Los Angeles don't like to read, blah, 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 blah. Well,
Ouch.
all of a sudden, yeah. And I was like, okay. All of a sudden, I get contacted by marketing saying, hey, we need a book about Los Angeles. You interested? And I was like, absolutely. So
let's go. All right.
Yeah, so that's actually what got me to start writing the book. And from there, I live so close that I already knew a bunch of locations. But when I started to do research, I found all of these others that I never even would have thought would be haunted, one of which was Dodger Stadium. I mean, who would think Dodger Stadium would have ghosts? But then when you read about the history of Dodger Stadium and how it came to be, you start to go, oh yeah. So it makes more sense. But yeah, no, I am really glad that I was able to do this book. You have no idea.
Man, it was cool. And one of the things I love about it as someone with family all throughout Southern California, and I hear about some of these places from time to time, is the way in which you bring to light a lot of the hidden histories of these properties and these streets and, different sites around the region, things that, the kind of casual observer would never, ever pick up on. And yet, here you are, you're kind of shining your flashlight into their dark corners and saying, hey, look, there's something over there. We need to take a look at it.
Yeah, and believe it or not, that's one of the things that I enjoy most. I kind of joke about the fact that the only reason I'm a writer is it gives me an excuse to do research.
Yep.
So when I the actual writing of the book takes me very little time, but the research is what takes so long. I love to just dive into the locations. And one of the things I told myself a long time ago is that I was not going to do anything that made history unhappy. So I'm not going to put my own feelings into it. I'm not going to, try and put politics or anything like that into the history, because the history itself is just amazing. And when you really dive deep into histories, it's amazing what you can come up with.
I really felt that as I read through this particular volume, because the stories almost tell themselves, and the personages, the individuals, the characters, the properties, I mean, they're all so incredibly rich that, you just you can sit back and let them do the talking, and, you're just kind of cruising along. I want to start off with maybe a bit more of a macro question for you, Brian, because I think it's a really interesting one.
Sure.
You've got a baker's dozen of different sites and cases, here in Haunted Heart of LA. One of the threads running throughout your book is that there is kind of an ongoing debate over which property or which historic house or hotel and so forth is the most haunted. Now, I don't want to wade into that debate because I for sure am not equipped, but I'm interested in the fact that there is a debate over which is most haunted for such a massive city. Why do you think there is?
It has to do with the diversity of people. So we'll take the paranormal community kind of as a whole. You have people that go to one location, and that may be one of the only locations they ever go to. So let's say it is the Cecil Hotel. They have gone to the Cecil Hotel 15, 20, 30 times, so they know what is going on there, yet they only go to the Pico House twice. So to them, because they don't have the experiences that they have at one location, they just assume that it doesn't have the same amount of activity as another location. So like with Dodger Stadium, a lot of people have no clue that there is haunting activity there. So to them, it would never even enter their head that could be one of the most haunted locations in Los Angeles. I have my own views. Other people have their views, and none of them are wrong. It just all depends on their point of view.
It's funny. The argument or the debate reminded me slightly of, that old saw that if you ever were to collect all of the alleged fragments or relics of the true cross and combine them into an actual cross, that sucker would be as high as the Empire State. Everybody's got a piece, right?
Exactly.
Which is kind of fun to think about. Well, I want to skirt over two cases real quick before we get to our main attraction today. And you just mentioned them, the Pico House and the Cecil Hotel. It's interesting because, Brian, part of your history, which I love, is not just a history of the property and the haunting, but it's actually a cultural history of Los Angeles at the time at which these structures were built, and who were the investors, and what was the mercantile landscape looking like at the time, and were these sort of prospectors made good, or were they sort of self-made businessmen? The proprietor of the Pico House, of course, was this magnanimous, generous individual who just wanted to give everything away to everybody, and it bankrupted him. So like these kind of great stories of people, but also stories of the time. So I have one question about each of those before we get to our main attraction. Pico House, how much fun did you have writing about that? It must have been a blast, right?
It actually was, especially since I have had the pleasure of going in and investigating the location. And when I say location, and it's the reason that I combined 3 different locations into one with the Pico House, is because all 3 of those locations are basically connected. They're all one building, with the Pico House kind of being the anchor. And because of the fact I really like history, I didn't, and it's kind of sad because Pico is everywhere in the Los Angeles basin. I didn't know enough about his history when I was investigating the locations to understand fully what I was investigating.
Sure.
So that was where I had the most fun, is as I was researching Pio Pico himself, I was thinking back to my investigation going, oh, okay, so that makes sense on why certain things happened, why, I had seen certain things. So that one just really, it was kind of more on a personal level due to my own discoveries, shall we say.
I tell you, it is so nice when you read an account like yours, occasionally to encounter who is like someone who's effectively a folk hero. We're not talking about someone we had on last week's episode where, you got a matron who has an illicit affair and then hides her child in a basement and it results in a murder-suicide and the whole thing is awful, awful, awful start to finish. With Pio Pico, I mean, you got a guy who just everybody loves. He's just a genuinely good dude.
He was, yeah.
Those are rare, man. Nice to meet one every now and then in a paranormal book.
Yeah, exactly. And it was fun that I could bring him to our readers. Because a lot of people do not know who Pio Pico was. They just know, Pico Boulevard, or Pico Rivera. So it was nice to be able to bring him to the people.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was great. Love that chapter. Now, I'll say this. My love for that chapter was equally matched by my absolute abhorrence at everything I read about the Cecil Hotel. This was one of the, we talk about page turners, and this was a page turner that had me on each paragraph just no, please stop, not more, no more, let it end. And no, Brian, you wouldn't do that. You gave us the whole horrible history of this. I mean, I think I'm now a believer. It's cursed. The place is cursed. I'm never setting foot anywhere near there. Holy crap. Demi, did you have to touch it with a barge pole just to be able to get in? How did you do that?
Okay, so I had actually been going to the Cecil Hotel for about the last 8 or 9 years. Not staying there, mind you. There are not enough inoculations to ever get me to stay at the Cecil.
No.
But I had been going in and talking to people. And if you ever want to know anything about a hotel, talk to housekeeping. My God, they know everything.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd go in and I would talk to housekeeping. I would talk to, maintenance people and things like that. Specifically, to find out about the ghost activity. And I couldn't find much, to be perfectly honest with you. However, I am not one of those people who believe in curses. I think curses are self-fulfilling. But I'm sort of with you on the Cecil Hotel. If there is a place that is cursed, that is the
you
place.
Found it.
Yeah. I mean, my God, as I was researching it, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I'm like, I was kind of like you. It's like, all right, now I can get into the good stuff. Oh my God, nope, no more good stuff. Wait, what? And it just kept going.
There was never any good stuff. It was only misery and opprobrium and just despair all the way through.
Right, and it's just absolutely amazing how one location can have that much bad stuff go on over that long of a period. We're coming up on 100 years and it still hasn't stopped.
Yeah. And that for everybody out in podcast land, that's your reason to buy the book. Go and enjoy, like go check it out. So, okay, no, I wanted to highlight that one because, you're a very fair researcher, and, you're very quick to say, I don't know what's going on here, but it defies explanation. When we look at a much more visible emblem of Los Angeles, right? When we turn our gaze not towards the downtown, but to the hills, we see another place where certain unexplained things are happening on the back of a kind of a foundation of neglect and disrepair. And so I'm not going to bury the lead here. We're talking about the utterly world famous Hollywood sign, okay? And you have this great account of the deep history of the Hollywood sign, including the fact that it was formerly a Hollywood land sign, and that there are some ghost letters which currently populate it, which may or may not be causing some problems for some folks. So take us back to the beginning of this iconic emblem and tell us what happened.
Okay, so to start, most people don't realize that the Hollywood sign is not in Hollywood, but in the actual city of Los Angeles. It sits within the boundaries of Griffith Park. Now, Hollywood is actually a suburb of Los Angeles, but it's not Los Angeles proper, where the Hollywood sign actually is. And it was originally, the sign said Hollywoodland. And it was never meant to last more than about 18 months. It was an advertisement for a housing development that they were doing. As soon as all of the houses were sold, the Hollywoodland sign would come down and it would never be seen again. However, over time, the residents of Hollywood started to say, hey, this is our sign. Don't you dare touch it. Well, the problem is nobody wanted to take care of it. So because it wasn't built to last, the weather took its toll on it. Pieces of it would fall down, and it just started to just become decrepit. So finally, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce sort of stepped in and said, I'll tell you what, we will take over it, and we will take care of the maintenance. However, you need to lose the LAND. So the Hollywoodland sign became the Hollywood sign. And that is what people have come to recognize. And literally, it is now a symbol that people know around the world.
So there's this interesting dimension to that too, because its history of disrepair, its neglect, its corrosion, started causing some problems, which kind of gave it a reputation. And then even after it was rebuilt, there was these sort of problems which plagued the area. And you write that when a lady named Peg Entwistle finally made her fateful journey up there, it was almost as though that moment was a continuation of everything that had been happening for decades.
Yeah, so, Peg Entwistle, that is really a sad story. She was actually a fantastic actress, and she had been cast and had received a contract from a movie studio, but then the contract was rescinded, and she didn't think she would ever be able to get another contract. So she climbs up to the top of the one of the letters on the sign and throws herself off. And right after that, her aunt and uncle, who she was living with, received a letter from a studio. Well, they didn't receive it. It came to the house that she was living at, where she had gotten a new contract and a new movie deal. And so it's just like, oh my God, it was just really sad. And that sort of, to me, coincided with the curse of Griffith Park. A lot of people don't realize that Griffith Park is, again, one of the most cursed places in the United States, and probably, well, other than the Cecil, the most cursed place in California.
Those are tall words, Brian. Those are tall words.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look at the history of, Griffith Park itself, the Hollywood sign just fits in perfectly.
Yeah.
There have been, people who have moved in under the sign who still are seen there. A couple of them fairly famous besides Peg Entwistle. And it just, the sign itself just fits into Griffith Park.
It's interesting because Peg serves as, and you say this in so many words in the book, Peg serves as almost like a metaphor. She was an aspiring, promising, young actress. She was chewed up and spit out by so many studios. Her talent was kind of used and abused. She had a long part, in one feature film that, it was only discovered later that 12 minutes of her screen time, were found on the cutting room floor. And she was only told about that, after the fact. And it's sort of like, her struggle to make a career of herself, like so many young folks, out there in the industry, culminated in this moment of despair. And yet there's kind of something interesting because, as you write, she, even though she did, take her own life, she's still kind of around. And there's like a strange presence that people get there sometimes where they see someone very, closely resembling her description. Tell us about Peg's afterlife in the sign.
So a lot of people have seen Peg. The ones that bother me aren't necessarily the visions. It's the sounds of her body hitting. Those are the ones that kind of got to me. But there are a lot of people, and a lot of it is actually out there. And, people can read about it, that, especially in my book, that people from other countries who are, wandering around, looking at the sign, will actually spot her, and they're not sure it's her, but they assume, due to her 1930s style dress and things like that. And she is usually preceded by the aroma of her perfume.
Yeah, what a detail.
And it's told in so many different stories that it's kind of hard to dispute when you have people from around the world talking about the same smell without ever having known about it. So,
when I read that, I sort of thought, no, that can't be the case. And then you kind of bring out example after example of that exact little detail. And I'm going to tell you, it got a little weirder. It got a little weirder as I was reading,
That's a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I got a little tingle there. So, I mean, for those of us who've not actually been in close proximity to such a famous structure, how accessible is the area, the sign, that sort of thing?
So the area is accessible. However, getting down to the sign is challenging, especially since they really don't want people walking down to the sign or up to the sign anymore. So it is now off limits.
Okay.
But you can get fairly close, and there is a really good viewing area just below the sign that is fantastic for photographs.
So it's interesting that you say the area is now off limits. Of course, the Summer Olympics of 2028 are going to be held in Los Angeles, and the whole city is gearing up, for that to happen in 4 years' time. Have you heard of any ghostly sort of preparation for millions of people descending on LA, whether it's on Olvera Street or, crazy things happening out at the Hollywood sign or, a sudden rash of bookings at the Cecil Hotel? LA's back in the news.
Well, unfortunately, the Cecil Hotel is now specifically a low-income housing. So no more hotel guests, which may or may not be a bad thing. As far as the ghostly activity, I haven't heard of anything. However, I would imagine that the area of Leimert Park, where the body of Elizabeth Short was found, the infamous Black Dahlia, during the last Olympics in '84, the amount of reports, shall we say, coming from that area skyrocketed. So that's something that I have actually been wondering whether it's going to happen again. I do have some acquaintances who are police officers who deal with the LAPD, not necessarily that particular division of the LAPD, but I am definitely going to be kind of checking that out.
Well, it sounds like you and the team at Planet Paranormal are going to have your work cut out for you. Before we take a break for this week, and we'll come back next week with some more stories from Haunted Heart of Los Angeles, would you just tell us a little bit about the Planet Paranormal enterprise? And for our listeners who may not be familiar with your work outside of your titles as an author.
So Planet Paranormal actually started off as a radio hub for paranormal radio. Unfortunately, some of the more, shall we say, profitable radio hubs have sort of killed independent radio hubs. So we've dwindled to the point where we really don't have much going on with that anymore. However, what we did morph into is one of the more legitimate paranormal investigative teams on the West Coast. And we have actually had cases that have actually taken us as far away as Paraguay. So we do enjoy that. Home cases are what we really wanted to do to help people out. We never charge for any investigations ever. Everything is on our dime, and we want to make sure that people get help, whether it's paranormal or not. Most of the cases we get are non-paranormal, but we still try to help people if they have medical issues and things like that, finding them, proper doctors. And we had a former Marine who was getting help from the Marine Corps base, and they didn't realize just how far he had slipped, shall we say, until he had contacted us and needed help. And we actually contacted the Marine Corps base, and he got the help that he needed.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, if folks wanted to look up y'all's outfit, what's the best way for them to do so?
Just planetparanormal.com on any website, or I'm sorry, any server.
There you go, planetparanormal.com. Good deal. Well, Brian, we are going to come right back next week, and I'm going to do this. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to say it right now. For everybody out there who's listening, next week, lizard people.
Yeah,
that's it. Lizard people. We're going there, and I cannot wait. Tune back in. We will see you then. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a joy.
Thank you for having me. I love it.
Thanks for listening. Our guest has been Brian Clune, author of The Haunted Heart of Los Angeles, just published by the History Press. To order a copy of the book, visit your local independent bookstore or visit arcadiapublishing.com. Join us next week as we continue our conversation with Brian and get into, arguably, one of the strangest conversations ever recorded on our show. No, I'm actually serious about that. See you then. Thanks to our producer, Bill Huffman, our production director, Bridget Coyne, audio engineer, Sean Rule Huffman, and our executive producers, Michael D'Aloia and Gerardo Orlando. I'm your host, Benjamin Morris. Crime Capsule is a production of Evergreen Podcasts and a signature title of the Killer Podcasts Network. You can find Crime Capsule wherever you listen to podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcasts.com.
An airliner heads for Alaska with 101 passengers and crew. Then, somewhere over the Gulf of Alaska, Flight 293 slams into the icy waters below.
Even if all four engines quit, it just doesn't fall out of the sky.
No bodies were recovered. Loved ones had no closure and were left to wonder.
What happened to Flight 293?
Unsolved Histories, What Happened to Flight 293 is available now, wherever you get your podcasts.
How far would you go in your pursuit of the American dream? Would you put in the work?
911, what's your emergency?
Would you take a big risk?
What's the problem? What's the problem?
Would you cheat? Would you lie?
Were they shot? Were they shot?
Would you kill?
My mom is dead. My mom is right there.
I'm Jeremy Schwartz, and I'll be taking you inside the minds of some of our most notorious felons and outlaws, exploring the dark side to the American dream. You'll meet the picture-perfect brothers who teamed up to kill their parents, the thief who stole babies and ruined countless lives, the crypto king who siphoned off billions in the name of saving the world, and plenty more. From assassins to gangsters to killers and con artists, whatever the case, whoever the criminal, you don't know the full story until now. Go to AmericanCriminal.com or search for and follow American Criminal wherever you get your podcasts.